Lastly, we're going to turn to a shocking event that is all too prevalent, I'm afraid, in Nigeria with Boko Haram. There were a number of people going to a wedding feast, and all of them were apparently decapitated. Now, this was over Christmas, and it got no press at all. Well, page 7 in the bottom corner of a newspaper. But the media just ignore it, and they do it time and time again. Christians are being persecuted, and nothing is said.
Yes, it's infuriating. And I know Aid to the Church in Need, which is a Catholic charity, has really spoken up about this and said, Nigeria in particular, the increasing Islamification of Nigeria, Christians are at risk, they're being persecuted, this is a common event. And in fact, I think this particular atrocity where the Christians were beheaded was in revenge for the killing of an IS leader. And they said, whenever we see Christians before us, we will, slay them. Yeah. And as you said, you have to eke this out. This should be a scandal, actually. You have to eke this out of mainstream newspapers. Nobody's reporting on it. Boris Johnson, fortunately to his credit, just before Christmas in his address, talked about the plight of persecuted Christians. And I know Lord Alton in the UK, the crossbench peer, is doing an enormous amount of work to sort of raise awareness of what's happening, of persecuted Christians in Nigeria. In Pakistan is another place where Christians seem to be, thrown into jail on a whim. They look the wrong way at somebody and it's sort of blown up into blasphemy. And yeah, it's an increasing problem. But as soon as you say Christians are being persecuted, then you've got a whole other bunch of people who want to appear to be really liberal. And yeah, it's scandalous. Actually, it's scandalous that our brothers and sisters are being wiped out and persecuted, and we do have to stand up for it because it's a human rights violation. It's unjust. And if we don't stand up for our persecuted brothers and sisters, how can we expect anyone else to stand up for us? And it's our duty.
It is. And what about the UN in all this? What are they doing?
Very little, I think. I mean, the UN seem to be promoting their own agenda, which includes, abortion, which includes, gender ideology and transgenderism. And contraception, they seem to have been captured by, you talk about Boko Haram, Woko Haram, the sort of liberal, the liberal mindsets. But no, they are really not fulfilling their role. They are not keeping persecuted minorities safe. And actually, interestingly, so in China, there's the persecuted, the Muslim population in China are persecuted, and we hear quite a lot about that in the papers. I've been reading lots about it, and and it's important, to be fair, that the plight, I think it's the Uyghur Muslims in China, that too is highlighted because they're being put in concentration camps, they're being subject to forced organ transplants, and again, this is a gross infringement of human rights. And and the world is beginning to wake up to what's happening to China's Muslims, but actually nobody seems to be waking up to what's happening to Christians, particularly in Africa, but also as well. This seems to be creeping, doesn't it? So we're seeing lots of attacks on Christian churches in France and in Europe.
Indeed, yeah.
In particular, it's quite worrying that religious intolerance really does seem to be on the rise. But
Caroline, we're a soft touch. This is why.
I know, and this is it. And in America, there'll be a mass shooting in America, which understandably is scandalous, and everyone wants to talk about gun control. But actually, a Christian family coming out of a wedding party on Boxing Day, being brutally beheaded because of their faith, should be front page news. We should be saying Nigeria is not a safe place. We should be imposing sanctions on Nigeria. We should be calling the ambassador in and saying, what are you going to do about this? We should be putting trade pressure on. And of course, we don't. We don't, and it is a scandal, actually. It is.